Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Growth House Podcast. You're here with your host, Jesse Ray, and I'm here with my man, Pascal Wagner. Pascal, appreciate you being on the show.
Thanks for having me here, Jesse. I'm excited to hang out.
So the reason why I'm really excited is because we have a lot of friends in common, but one of my friends has a story that he always shares, and it involves you almost every single time along his journey of success. And that's our guy, one of my best friends, Diego Corzo. So I'm extra excited to have you on the podcast, man.
Yeah, I know exactly the story you're talking about, and I feel like I'm getting a lot of free PR out of it. So I'm excited to return a little bit of the favor because he's a major part of my story, and yeah, great to have that mutual person in common.
I love it. Well, let's start there. Like, Pascal, what is your story? And then from there, we're going to take it in different directions. You know, our audience is all about financial freedom, how to, quit that corporate job. And I kind of want to hear your story, man.
Yeah, no, I love it. Cool. So my story begins ever since high school. I was always hustling. I was trying to figure out how to grow my cash flow, live my ideal life from passive income, right? Like that's every single person's dream. And my best friend Diego and I kind of took the leap into house hacking or co-living, where we bought our first houses at 23. I loaned him his money for his first house. I saw, how he was renting it, how much money he was making. And I was like, let's partner up and do this. And it was the first real way that I learned how to make money while I sleep. And at 23, you have a lot more time on your hands than money. And so house hacking was an incredible way to get started, but it was still very active income, and I had to work for it every day. So, with that, my strategy had many shortcomings. Like I constantly battled self-doubt and frustration. Like for example, I went through a period where I was building my last venture-backed startup Walkthrough, and my co-living portfolio, I had 4 homes at the time, provided me like $3,500 a month in like net passive income. And it really helped me, set aside everything else, live ramen profitably. And it helped me get the start to kind of starting that company. But managing both this startup and managing my real estate portfolio was overwhelming because the income wasn't truly passive, right? Like the demands of my startup and all the property management left me questioning whether I was on the right path, and I really needed to kind of clean out my mind space at the time. So, yeah, I was constantly struggling between running my business and diversifying my investments. My business partners and my mentors often told me that I was, distracted, and that, this pressure kind of led to me to just selling off my portfolio and to focus on my startup. And it really felt like a setback. But it was just kind of necessary to regain focus for me at the time.
I would love to pause right there because I have a lot of startup founders that I know. And a lot of startup founders don't want anything to do with real estate. They want nothing to do with nothing except focus on their baby, focus on that startup, put the blinders on. So looking back, do you wish you would have been like blinders on the startup, or were you kind of happy that you actually got into real estate pretty early? So
I think I'm glad the way that I did it. I think getting into real estate and getting my first taste of, quote unquote, passive income made it real. It was like the first step in my journey. And, I 100% get this idea of like being laser focused on your one thing and everything else is a distraction, which is a huge part of why I'm, investing the way I am today in passive investment funds, and it's allowing me to regain all my focus again. Yeah, but I think the turning point really came when my dad passed away in 2021, and it really made me have to it forced me to take over my mom's, financial planning and help her retire. She was, 63. She, didn't manage any money in the family, and my dad managed it all. She doesn't really know anything about investments, and really realizing that I couldn't just rely on one source of income for her retirement, which was this co-living or this house hacking. I knew I needed a passive income strategy that was diversified out of my house hacking portfolio, wouldn't require my time, and also didn't have the volatility of the stock market. And so the spark happened while I was in GoBundance. So many of the guys that we talk about here, the Diegos, the Sam Wiegerts, the Brian Lubins, they're all in this GoBundance tribe. And when I looked at the people in that group, many of them were retired from investment funds. And so I had direct access to the people that could share their experience and advice on what funds they invested in and how they made their decisions. And so I even, joined this passive investing micro tribe where, we met every Friday to discuss investments and share deals and evaluate risks, right? I had a coach named Mike Klein who kind of helped me think through the passive investing strategy, and I was really fortunate to have them. They became my mentors, guiding me through the maze of passive investing opportunities and helping me refine my financial strategies. And so the result was just, with the help of GoBundance and my mentors, I put together a plan and executed on it. And now today I help make over $250,000 a year in, passive, what I call like true passive income. And, I've not only set myself up with a foundation of cash flow, but I've also helped my mom retire me from like a variety of different income sources. So that's my story of how I got here today.
That's amazing. And you mentioned a game plan. $250,000 is a lot of money with true passive income. And I think a lot of people will say, "Oh, I have rentals; those are passive income."
Yeah.
Semi-passive, yeah. I would say. I think it depends on how well you're set up, your systems and processes. I don't know if you want to talk about that real quick.
Yeah. I mean, so I would say mine is half. So maybe I shouldn't say true. Mine is half. So 50% of our income comes from the co-living portfolio. I have a property manager in place, and they run the day-to-day operations. And then, I'm checking in with them, once a week on Thursdays is our day. And then the other half is strictly like mailbox money, checks to my bank account, debts, money from different funds, from ATMs, from oil and gas, from multifamily, from self-storage, like all different types of asset classes coming in every month. Yeah. So the way I think about this world of private investment funds is that you are the money partner in a business venture, right? So Jesse, right now you are, building up your co-living portfolio, and you in this case would be the general partner. And if most people approach this, they want to go out and buy a business or buy, real estate or buy Airbnbs or, buy a laundromat. And all of those things are very active. And, think of any kind of active business venture where someone is managing the investment, and then being a passive investor is literally just me partnering with someone like you and giving you money. So anything that you can do actively, I mean, I don't know about anything. I might go out on a limb here, but like for the most part, if someone is doing something actively and they need a money partner, that's what we're talking about here. So, someone could invest alongside you and be a passive investor. I'm investing alongside people of them buying and identifying multifamily apartment buildings, people going out and buying self-storage, the people that have run oil wells for the last 40 years. Like I'm the partner that's going to go give them money on their next drilling project. Like that's what it kind of looks like in basic terms.
That makes sense. I love that. So for someone to have that ability, you need cash, right? You need to be
Yeah,
able to have
totally.
some cash. So I'm curious, what was the main source for you to actually have that cash that you're able to allocate towards, those different, investment
Yeah.
strategies?
Yeah. So there were two major things that happened. So the one, as I mentioned, my dad passed away, and my mom had an inheritance of a couple mil, right? So I had to then figure out how to help her invest that. So that was one. The other was back in 2013. I have to go back and check. 2012 or 2013. I made a 100K investment into Tesla with my dad. Made a bunch of money from real estate. And, that's when I was like partnering with Diego. I had a Facebook advertising company. I was like living in Bali for 6 months, and I was making, $15,000 a month as a 23-year-old, and I was living off $1,000 a month, living like a king. It was, and that's how those kind of different pieces all contributed towards having that capital to invest. And I think when you're earlier on in your journey, you have more money than time. And so naturally, you are the person that kind of becomes the operator of something. And the other is when you get older, or once you've had some success, that's when you're like, wow, I finally have a liquidation event. I don't have that much time to do everything. I might have might have my business, I might start something new. I might have a family. I might want to take some time off. And you have more money than time. And so that's kind of where that equation flips.
Let me ask you this, because I'm interested in your thought process, because I like the way you think. And I was listening to a couple of your podcasts. I'm like, I got to ask you. So my head, what I was doing, I was working in corporate America. My salary was like 100K plus commissions. I was working corporate sales. And then I was like, once I hit that 100K, then that will give me kind of that safety net to then go start a business that I'm like passionate about and earn, my financial freedom, because I can, live off of 8 to 10K a month pretty easily as a single guy at 30. So
Totally.
that was my like thought process and idea. What was yours? Were you like, I need to hit a certain number? Did you want to start a business after you hit that financial freedom number? I'm asking you a lot of questions here, but I want to throw one more in there, because I thought that once I hit passive income number and once I had financial independence, that I was going to chill. And then I realized I can't scale, first of all, if I'm chilling. And then second of all, like I got all this energy. I'm still young. I'm still ambitious. I still want to do more.
Yeah. Yeah. What I'm finding is that people, once they hit the number, the goalposts move, right? I think it's more of, I also have had this experience multiple times now where, first I hit financial freedom when I was, 25, and I was making the $3,500 a month from the rentals, and I was making 15K a month from the Facebook ad agency. And I was at a point where I was like, oh, I could sit on the beach in Thailand and travel around for a couple days or a week. And it's like, I get so bored. Like, all of us want to find purpose of some kind. And if it changed the equation from I need to work to I want to work. And it wasn't like, when I first hit it the first time of $3,500 and you're 23, like I mean, if that's coming in every month and you start seeing those numbers grow over time, like that changes the way that you think. But, the first question you kind of talked about was, maybe I'd rephrase it as, hey, if I'm working my corporate job, does it maybe make sense to like go start this side hustle, or what is the right path? And I think if I think about that question, I talk with people a lot about this. I think it's, you need to decide what your path is, right? Is your path, I'm going to work in a career and I'm going to put all my eggs into like climbing the corporate ladder, and get into multiple six figures and try and stuff away, or I get into like a sales commission role where I can earn, hundreds of $1,000s if I'm a really good sales rep. And like, let's say you're this professional sales rep or you're a doctor, right? Like going and then investing in an Airbnb and or co-living for them to try and maximize a couple properties, that starts to eat up all of their time. And where they make the most money with their time is in their primary venture, like in their sales job or in their corporate career. So it makes more sense for them to double down on their path and invest it passively to not get distracted, unless your goal is to do something else. Like if your goal is to become the Airbnb or co-living king, right? Then like taking your main hustle and saying, hey, I'm going to put in the enough hours here, and I'm going to focus the rest of my time in getting really good at this other skill, because that's how I want to learn how to make a lot of money, and that eventually be where I make most of my money. Then I think that totally makes sense. I think where it doesn't make sense is if it's like, hey, I'm just doing this thing because I can get some passive income. But if you have to manage 10, 20, 30 homes in order to replace your salary, like that's another job, and a whole set of it's and as I've gotten older, I've just like become more and more aware of that time trade-off and like, what is it that I'm trying to focus on? How do you think about that?
Mm-hmm. How do I think about that trade-off?
Yeah,
I totally agree. And that's why, kind of going off on this topic, a lot of people are like, okay, you need this many units. And I'm not a unit count guy. I'm a small and mighty, highest and best use of every single property. How do I do that? How do I maximize the cash flow? Sure, up front, you're going to need to build systems and processes to make it more passive. But up front, yes, it is pretty active. And so for me, I had the vision of Growth House, which is these houses that are co-living homes for business professionals and entrepreneurs. So for me, it made sense to take that leap and say, hey, I replaced my corporate salary, let's go all in. But I totally agree with you saying, if someone's making, $250,000 in their corporate job, they're not mad about it, they actually maybe enjoy it a little bit, then don't just jump ship because of this shining object syndrome of passive income. Like you're probably going to hate it more doing this whole passive income, which I think it needs to be talked about. Most of it is not actually passive. It's more semi-passive.
Yeah. I would also say, I think it can eventually become more passive. Like if you crush it, like I know several people who have portfolios that they're completely hands off, but it takes a while to get there. Like if you follow Cody Sanchez and you're like in the buying the business camp for, to get financial freedom, like I'm totally on board with it. But it's more of like hey, there's a lot of risk and a lot of effort and active, income that's required for years before it becomes passive. And I haven't found anything that's as passive as investment funds once you've made the investment.
I love that. Let's dive into co-living, because that's something that we both,
good.
love, and we both are. We've done this for a few years. So, shout out to Sam Uyghur, who you just put on this podcast. I love you guys' dialogue. I will claim him as the co-living king for now. He's been doing this for like 10 years. He's awesome. But let's talk about your portfolio. I'm pretty sure you started in Atlanta, or you started maybe in Austin and then moved it to Atlanta.
Yeah. So I started back in 2020. I started back in 2013 or 14 when I bought my first house with Diego in Austin, and I was the money guy. So, the kind of deal that we worked out was Diego, I'll help with marketing, I'll fill with tenants, I'll do like kind of anything I can do from Colorado, because that's where I lived at the time. Like I will handle finances and bookkeeping, but you need to like show rooms to the tenants. And if there's any maintenance that needs done, like you need to do it. And so then the deal we worked out was like, I'll front the money, and then we will split cash flow based on how much both of us have put in the deal. So I will start at 100% of getting all the cash flow, and you can buy into the property over time, at like the original investment. So like, 3 years went by, he and the home appreciated by 100K, he could still buy in at the original value. So if we had to put down 30K, he could pay me 15K, in increments along the way, and then slowly get that cash flow. And that's how we did our first deal.
Let me ask you this, because I think a lot of people in my community, especially I listen to the podcast, are in that camp. They're like, I want to get that first deal. Would you recommend this is a way to do it? Find a friend, find someone that's looking to, do something similar, has the cash, but maybe doesn't want to do the house hack and manage the property?
This is literally what creative financing is, right? It's like, it's figuring out a creative way to get the deal done. And I think in order to do looking back, did I plan this? No, I didn't plan this, but I got lucky. Diego had, would have been a much harder sell if Diego was like, hey, I've never done this before. Would you be willing to go split and do this 50-50? It was a very different conversation when he was like, hey, Pascal, can you loan me money for my first home? And, we did that. And he took on the liability and the risk, and then he started doing the house hacking with the first home. And then we saw all the numbers, and he obviously was able to start paying us back. And then it was like, oh, I can now invest with someone who has a track record more than me. One home is better than zero. And also Diego was my best friend at the time. So, it was a great way to like get into a deal. But if, I think if you get him on the show, if you ask him, for him, it was like, I have time and I have knowledge, and he was a real estate agent, and, we could buy, like, we also negotiated in our deal that we would, he wouldn't charge any realtor fees. And so, we were able to buy homes a lot cheaper, and, there was a whole lot of dynamics at play where I was willing to do it because the way that we creatively came to the table.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like he just brought immense value up front, even though he didn't have the cash. Plus, you guys were best friends. Plus, he had a little bit of a track record. I guess not much of a track record to start, but he had you, so that would help him with the first track record.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, Diego and I have the history of, like, we like hung out every day in high school, and we wanted to both buy our first MacBooks, so we went and took a $300 loan out from my mom, and she took us to Costco. We bought pounds and pounds worth of candy and then started selling them for $1 a piece to buy our first MacBook. So like, I had some history with Diego of like both of us hustling. We ended up buying our first MacBooks in high school. And so like there was a track record there. Right. And I think that's people putting together their first deal forget that like no one wants, like there's too much risk. There's already risk investing with someone with a track record, like doing your first deal is very difficult. And so figuring out how to buy something with no money down or, you have to like offer something creatively to get the deal done.
One thing I want to throw out there, I have someone in my community named Sharon, and what she did to get her track record going, she does co-living arbitrage. So she's got like 4 co-living arbitrage units, her houses with like a bunch of units, obviously within the house. And she's been doing this for a year and a half. So that's a great way if someone's just starting off and can't get into a home, but you want to show a track record, boom, just gave you guys exactly what you could do for co-living.
Totally. What's another way? I mean, I'm a huge fan of doing work for free. Like when I was in my 20s, all I did was find really wealthy people and like said, hey, like, what can I help you with? What can I do for free? So in this instance, it would be like, how do you go in and find someone who's already operating deals like you and say, hey, are there tasks that I can help you with? How can I get in your world? How, what can I take off your plate? Like you can get the experience by just helping people that are in the niche, and you'll learn so much more if you just invest like 3 months. It's not that long.
So true. I love that. Okay, so you got your first house, and then how the co-living portfolio grow?
Yeah. So we, one house turned into 2, turned into 3, turned into 4 in Austin, and then I met Sam Wiegert through GoBundance, and he was doing co-living, I was doing co-living, and at the time, I was always looking for partners, and he was like, "Look, I buy all mine on my own." But I do know this other guy that does co-living. His name was Jason Wallace. And so I bought a couple properties with him in Charlotte, North Carolina. So we had 2 over there. And so, then at the time I had some in Austin, I had some in Charlotte. And I had those for a certain period of time. And then I ended up selling them to focus on that venture-backed startup. And so that's when my portfolio kind of like went from 1 to 6 down back to 0. And then back in 2019, as I was working for Techstars as a fund manager, I wanted to get back into co-living. And so I was trying different ways to raise money and test out different business models. And at that time, what I did is I had the track record of doing a bunch of co-living homes incredibly profitably. And so I raised $200,000 from 4 different investors and was basically like, hey, give me a loan. I'll pay you 8 to 10%. And I'm going to use that loan to fund the down payment. I'm personally not going to make any money for the first 7 years. All the money and the cash flow is all going to go directly to paying you back. And so at the end of 7 years, I've paid back your principal and all your interest, and you are happy, you got a good deal, and now I own the property outright and get to, have the cash flow. And so my focus was like, I'm okay not making money for a long time. I can go work at corporate or whatever for a really long time and know that in 7 years, I can basically have a whole cash flowing portfolio. So
That's
that was
amazing.
my strategy.
I love that you thought long term. If you said, like, even when you said 70 years to me, I'm like, oh, that's such a long time. So I'm so glad you mentioned that. Okay, so when was the start of the 7 years?
Yeah, so it was in 2019, and that's when I raised my first amount of money. And so things were going okay. They were going well. Whatever. We were making the interest payments, and then that's when when that life event happened. My dad passed away, and my whole life flipped upside down. And it was interesting because in my role at Techstars, I was the portfolio and fund manager at Techstars. So like I was the person that was in charge of deploying, like the investment team, the chief investment officer, Jason Seats, they had all set the strategy for the fund. Like, hey, we're going to invest in these types of companies, and we're going to invest these types of checks. And it's a $150 million fund, so that means we can make 300 investments, and we want to make 100 investments a year. And they kind of set all that strategy. And then what they brought me in to do was figure out, out of all the companies within the existing Techstars portfolio, there were over 3,000. Our goal was to invest in the best ones and create kind of like an index fund approach of investing in startups, which was pretty new at the time. And one of the companies that we came across was this company called PadSplit. And it was the first time where, I was there because I sat on the investment team. I was the person who literally decided that, hey, we should invest in this company from the fund.
Yeah, you got it. You're like, this is going to work.
Right. And then also, I was sitting in a position where then I got to read all their board meeting materials, and I got to like meet the CEO and the founders and like really understand their model. And to me, the light bulb moment went off where it was like, oh, instead of doing 50-50 equity partners with people, I could sell, my distributed portfolio and have it all be in Atlanta where Pad Split's home base is. And I can pay someone, 12, 15% instead of giving up 50% equity. And so that's kind of how my whole model transitioned. I then started investing in co-living properties. I have 12 now in Atlanta, and I kind of consolidated that whole portfolio. It's over 104 tenants, and that's how that portfolio came to be.
Okay, you mentioned a couple of things I got to talk about. One, it sounds like you had the end in mind with this whole real estate co-living portfolio. You're like, what's my exit strategy? And for you, it sounds like you want to group a portfolio all in one area, probably easier to manage for you. But then also you want to eventually sell it to who? Like a private equity company? Who are you looking to potentially sell that in the future to? I mean, obviously it's cash flowing probably pretty well too.
Yeah, I don't really have any intent to sell. I'm a huge fan of this model. I think for many reasons. When I, went into college, as the first time I experienced co-living, we shared a kitchen, we shared bathrooms, and I had roommates. And then after college, when I moved to Colorado, and I was just getting on my feet, I lived in an entrepreneur house, where it was co-living. There were 6 of us, living in the house. We, had family dinners, and, it wasn't until a couple of years ago that I always had roommates, right? Like this co-living model is not new, and without it, I wouldn't have been able to afford a one bedroom, and so I'm super passionate about it because I've lived in the product for over 8 years, and so like I know what I like and I know what's important to me, and probably many people have probably experienced that, like living with a roommate is pretty normal, and so I think that's one. 2, it's it's incredibly profitable. It's probably the most profitable thing in real estate that I've found, and it's pretty consistent. And 3, I love it because
Hold on. I gotta drop some bombs on that one because I agree, man. Everyone trying to hate on co-living, man. Come on now, go do your
Yeah.
Airbnbs. That's seasonal. What's the highest, best return, consistent cash flow, Airbnb or co-living? That's the answer.
Yeah, man. And 3, you just mentioned it, the seasonality. It's like, in the last 10 years, we had an insane run up. And it's like, when I'm investing, I am investing not for shiny objects, but for the downside scenario. Like, what happens when the economy goes into a recession, or we have another 2008, or 2001? Like, these cycles keep happening. And like, do you want to be in an asset class where, like, in luxury travel, which is like discretionary, or do you want to be in an asset class? I don't want to be invested in luxury class A apartment buildings when we're at the top of a market, right? Like, I want to be investing in the most affordable thing, like mobile home parks, co-living, because what happens in a recession or depression? Like, people are moving away from the class A apartment buildings and everyone shrinks down a class, it's like, oh, I can't afford that one anymore. Like, I need to go back to living with roommates, or, it's like that asset class becomes more desirable. And like, what am I investing for? I'm investing for the downside protection. And I thought co-living was like the number one best. And I still think so, like over the next 10 years, do you think rent is going to get more expensive or less expensive? Are we going to have more inflation or less inflation? Or, is it going to be harder or easier for people to live on their own? Like, you hear all these reports from like Warren Buffett to like the greatest financial thinkers of our time that like this is becoming a renting country, and more and more people are not being able to afford the basics. And as inflation keeps eating up income, like all the discretionary stuff goes away. But you still need to pay for where you live.
Talk that talk, man. You just I'm just gonna play this clip, and everyone asks me like, "Why would you do co-living?" Well, listen to Pascal. I
Yeah, man.
love that. I love that.
I'm a huge fan of this. I've been doing it for over 10 years. I've lived in it. I see it. I see the people that live in my homes, and when I go tour them, they come out to me and they're like, "Hey man, just wanted to say thank you so much again. Like I wouldn't be able to live anywhere else. And you helped me get out of a bad divorce or a bad breakup, or, I moved to a new city, or I'm just trying to save my money for, trying to pay off my credit cards or save for a down payment on a home." Like those are the types of people that are living in these homes. And that's at least who I go for. It's like, it's not college students. I'm not buying in college areas. It's just, near major corporations and employment, people who want to save money.
Exactly. You just hit on one of the misconceptions. I think a lot of people think it's like super affordable living in the sense of like they're on the street and this is the only house they can get. A lot of my people, even when I started before I was doing like these entrepreneur houses, were just people that could maybe afford a studio, but they're like, I'm trying to save for, my loan I'm trying to pay off for my student loan, or I'm trying to save for a house. So it's not people that are just like really like can barely afford the rent for the most part, at least for me. And maybe you price your, places the
Yeah.
same way.
I've learned I've been in a bunch, right? Like I've been in Austin, I've been in Charlotte, and I'm now in Atlanta. And the price points are a lot different. Like, I'm still charging the same amount of rent that I did when I started. 600 to $1,000 a month is what I charge. But depending on if you've got a private bathroom, how large your room is, like, if it's in a secluded area, whatever. And there's my favorite people are people on Social Security, to be honest, because they're older and they just keep themselves. They don't, they have consistent income coming in. They're not dependent on a job. And, I think it's not that that's my choice, but most of the time, because it's based on lead flow. But, I probably a good 20% of my people are on Social Security, and they're just looking for a place to live out the rest of their years,
Mm-hmm. All right, we're gonna do a rapid fire because I'm gonna nerd out with you. Ready? So,
Yeah.
do you have Pass Split manage all your properties, or do you do any management yourself?
In December, I just took over management 100%, and so I have a team now.
Okay, walk me through. What does that team look like?
Yeah, so it is a combination of two people. It is a maintenance tech on the ground. I pay him $25 an hour. Basically, the way that I've arranged it is that he gets paid around $50K a year. So it's a full-time role. Like, he's my handyman. And then I have a incredible call center supervisor, former property manager that is from the Philippines that I pay $12.50 a month. That is my full-time property manager, handling day-to-day operations, coordinating, answering tenant issues, answering the phone when people are trying to move in and they have issues, people getting locked out, verifying if, doing all the onboarding calls for tenants that are coming in, doing, weekly checks, checking all the security cameras, checking that all the common areas are clean. We've instituted also the third kind of role is that we have a house manager. I adopted that house manager program from Sam Wiegert, and that's been really, really successful. So I have a house manager in each house, and we've gone through a couple different iterations. But the latest iteration is that they get paid by task. So they get paid $8 to take out the trash every week, empty the trash from all the common areas to the main bin, take it from the main bin to the street every week, take before and after photos and submit them to us. Then, you get paid an extra $50 if you do all the common area cleaning, which includes taking before and after photos of everything, but cleaning the lint from the dryer, wiping down the kitchen, pulling everything out of the fridge and doing a deep clean and putting it back in, and wiping down the floors and and then wiping down, cleaning all the bathrooms. And so that's how we have that set up. I have security cameras in all the common areas. So I know if people, oh man, if you hear about people saying, oh, someone stole my food or there's theft, oh man, we get all that stuff on footage and then immediately find them, get them out of the house, and they're out. And it's, man, we've, huge strides we've made in our process.
Okay, you don't want to ask. Give me a horror story.
I mean, look, I think, man, I've got many. I think, one of these instances where someone was stealing, they, one of the other tenants was like, hey, we openly tell everyone, and we have signs that say like, hey, if you think someone's stealing your food, let us know. We'll check the cameras and give you the footage. Like we want 100% accountability. And then we gave it to them, and then we addressed it with them. And, we tell them like, hey man, like we have you on tape that you're stealing stuff. And they're like, no, you've got the wrong guy. It's like, no. I literally like, here's the footage. Like, do not do this again. You're paid, you're going to be fined $50 and like, you're going to need to leave the house. And one of the person whose stuff was stolen, like went and knocked on the door and they kind of had some, they talked about it and the guy like pulled out, like started showing his gun and then we had all that video footage. And I immediately, I called him back and I was like, hey man, if you are not out of there in the next 24 hours, I'm going to get so many police people call. I'm immediately calling the police. Like, you better get out of there before you get arrested. And 3 weeks later, the cops came and had an arrest warrant and tried looking for him. But by that time he was out. That's one. I've had a friend who he had someone overdose in their home and pass away. And so he had to go, had to like clear the body out of the room with the police and like the whole nine. So, these are the horror stories. These are few and far between, but you definitely learn about people and how crazy people are when you start to do any kind of real estate management, whether it's hospitality, Airbnb, co-living, people are people.
So true. And how do you implement certain things to learn from those horror stories? I'll give you an example from me. So I had a situation where I let someone in, and I had a couple red flags early in the vetting process, but I just saw like myself in him. I'm like, I believe in this kid. And honestly, he was great until he got in a car accident. Then he led to basically getting addicted to like the drugs that the doctors were giving him. Then he turned into a completely different person and was late for rent. And then long story short, he was kind of causing noise and everyone was complaining about him. So I said, hey, you get 3 strikes. Strike number 3, I'm like, hey man, you got to move out. Like, I want the best for you, but I got to protect the home. And he's just like, all right, cool, whatever. And then he ends up having his friend steal like the TV in like the main living room. I'm like, dude, like, no one's going to do that except you. The day we gave you like 30 days to move out, that's the day you stole the TV. Like, no shit, it's going to be you.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
what we basically ended up doing is being a little bit more, strict on our vetting process. And I believe we have the best vetting process out there in application. So I'm curious, what did you learn? And then what is your steps to, get leads and also the vetting process?
Yeah. Look, I think what you're doing is just you have issues and then you need to run experiments and learn from them, right? So like, one of the key issues that I had for a really long time was people leaving dishes in the sink. It's a huge common complaint. Like, hey, I can't use the kitchen. This person leaves all their dirty dishes in the sink. And so, originally I was like, so I sent, I did like customer discovery and I like sent messages to all the tenants and I was like, hey, like, what do you think about me adding, security cameras in the kitchen and like being able to track that? And, it was originally met with a lot of like, some people are like, yeah, that'd be great. And then most of them were no. And so, what I realized, it just kept happening. And after a certain point, I was like, you know what? I don't care. Like, I'm the boss. It's my rules or you get out. So I'm going to add security cameras, whether you like it or not, and you can choose to leave. But we are having cameras. And so I finally ran that experiment. And then once they were installed, the people that had issues with the cameras were the people that were causing the problems. And they were the people that moved out pretty quickly. And then, like you give someone a fine, $25 for leaving dishes in the sink. You only need to do that once or twice and they're pretty upset and they leave, and so, I think one of my bigger learnings, and maybe this comes with experience over time, but my house, my rules, if you don't like it, you can get out, like there are people fighting for places to live, that are as affordable as this one. Like, we have, and I, it's been a dramatic change. The moment people have accountability, and what I've learned is that any rule that I set that I cannot enforce doesn't matter. Like one that I currently think about right now is I still have issues with people flushing stuff down the toilet they don't need to, and so toilet clogs and huge issues. So I'm experimenting with different ways to do that.
It's a little harder to do a camera in the bathroom. So
yeah, you can't do that, right? So to me, it's like I'm encouraging people to tattle. I also am. I've thought about tracking when the issue happens and when I catch it on camera. But the issue is that with these flushing instances, like they could have flushed 3 weeks ago, So I'm trying to figure out, do I proactively, run a plumbing machine through every toilet once a month so that I don't have these issues? Like I'm constantly experimenting with different things.
That's interesting. I've not had that issue. I've been doing co-living now for 3 years. Haven't had that one. That's I can see it happening. So maybe I'm just getting lucky right now. I mean, you have a lot more tenants though. I mean, you have 100.
I have 8 to 10 per home.
Per home. Wow. Yeah. The most we have in a home is 6 plus a detached casita. So it's a lot more bodies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have about 5 more minutes? I know we're a little over since we started it.
Dude, I've got time, man.
Okay, cool. Because I'm loving this. There's not too many people I can deep dive.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here to hang. I've got time.
So here's what I do. I want to hear your thoughts on this, because I don't do pass split. I manage my own homes, and we just do every single week. I have cleaners, professional cleaners come, and they clean everything besides the rooms. And that's kind of a way for me to mitigate, dishes in the sink even. Like we usually don't have that, but even if we do, then the cleaners will, knock out the dishes every Thursday. So that's one thing. Have you ever thought about that, or are you just like, that expense is not worth it?
I've had different experiences with cleaning. I think first and foremost, part of the property management that I've had before, I paid a cleaning fee, and cleaning never really happened. You look at cleaning never really happened. And once I started paying attention there, that was very clear. And I think my thesis on this goes along with the house manager program. When you have someone in the house that is like senior, that has some sort of sway in the house because they're getting paid to manage it and keep it clean, they take pride in how clean everything is. And I say, I tell the house managers I literally tell house managers, hey, when the person is moving in, I'm going to tell them that you cleaned their room and that you're the person responsible for keeping the place clean. So if it's not clean, I'm going to know, and the other people are going to know. And so like it changes the way that they step up to the plate. And, if you choose the right person in the house to be the house manager. And then also I think the dynamics are different, right? Like I found it's very difficult to keep consistent cleaners when you're not able to pay that much, right? Like, hey, I want you to go over and clean my house for 2 hours for $20 an hour. So they're going to drive across town for $40. It's like not really enough money for you. Like whenever I would find someone, they would always find better jobs that were more consistent or, had more hours. So by having someone where it was their home, it was like, wait, I'm living here and I can basically reduce the way we pitch it is like you earn $1,000 a year by taking on this house manager role. So like you're reducing your okay, you're paying, let's call it on average $700 a month. So what, $8,400 a year, and we're able to reduce your income, what you're paying by $1,000 a year by you just helping around, like take out the trash once a week. A lot of these people, they're taking out the trash already, just not getting paid for it. There's basically, there's always one person in the house that ends up being the person responsible and like doing all the cleaning activities anyway. And they're the ones bitching about it, right? They're saying, hey, like, oh, I'm always taking out the trash, or this person always leaves XYZ in the sink, or, and it's like, the response I got when I introduced the program was like, wow, you're willing to pay me for things like I'm already doing anyway? Like, great. And like now they feel so much more engaged, and they clean because now we have them take before and after photos. They take so much more pride, and it's done so much better.
I love that. I think it's a great thing. I think that's something I'll explore. How do you get leads?
I can give you my contract.
Send that over, bro.
That I make them sign. Yeah.
Let's go.
How do I get leads? Look, I've experimented a couple different ways. I'm mostly just on the Pad Split platform. I focus. The way I think about it is, how do I make my listings the most attractive on the platform? It's like if you're on Airbnb, you're not really focusing on how do I, do Google AdWords or Facebook ads or, post on Facebook Marketplace to get people to go to my Airbnb. You don't do that. You optimize your listing. Like, how do I make sure I have the best photos? How do I like make my headline stick out, my description? And like, I know that, for example, my target demographic, I only buy things that are less than half a mile from a bus stop. That's part of my acquisition criteria because most of my people don't have access to a car. And so, I focus on those types of things. I think, that's how I do it today. When I started, I was all on Craigslist. I was in, before I would even buy a home, I had, 30 applicants, and I knew what the rooms would rent for, and, the tenants would move in the day after closing. And that's how Diego and I did our first couple. But, I think it changes based on your strategy and where you're, I also think that in Atlanta, Pad Split has a foothold. And there was a period of time where I was considering getting off the Pad Split platform and doing it all 100% in-house. And it's never off the table. But I think that, there's a different type of when I would do ads on Craigslist and Apartment Finder and Zillow, and a lot of those people, even whatever you write in the copy, depending on your market, but what I found is that 90% of those people, 95% of those people are looking for a one bedroom or a whole place, and they're not looking to share anything. And so I found that I was spinning my wheels and wasting a lot of time there. And I didn't try everything, but I think for me, I also would just, I also occasionally marketed my listings on Pad Split to my Pad Split listing on Craigslist or whatnot. But only when I was kind of in dire straits. I think, what I've really realized is I never really focused on tenant tenure. And tenant tenure, I think it was very helpful that PadSplit reoriented their pricing model to be more to make their North Star be tenant tenure. And what I mean by that is like how long the tenant stays at your property. Because what I found is that when someone would leave, I would have to pay for someone to clean it. It would be inactive for several days. Then it would, during the cleaning process, and then it would be listed for a couple weeks. And, sometimes they weren't, that was the best case scenario, right? And there's times where it's vacant for 90 days and I keep lowering the price a little bit and I'm, trying different things out, but for some reason I can't get the room listed or whatnot. And focusing on tenant tenure, lowering my price a little bit to get a tenant. I have tenants now that have stayed with me for 3.5 years. And, those are the people that, like, I'm now starting to get to the point where I have houses where everyone has been there for longer than a year and a half. And, like, those are the homes that give me the least effort. They're the best, right? And what are the homes where I have the most problems is where you get a lot of tenant turnover. And so I've now started, in my process now, I'm like, help me understand. I ask them, what do you do for work, and why are you looking to move? And are you like, hey, I'm just looking for a spot. Is my in between so that I'm waiting for, I'm looking for a 1 bedroom across town and just a place to like settle my feet. It's like, sorry, like we're not a hotel motel. We provide affordable, professional places for people to live, and it's totally changed the type of tenant I get, the quality, it's reduced the maintenance issues, and that's what I'm really focusing on is tenant tenure.
If you're on PadSplit platform and you're listening to this right now, this is the way you got to be thinking, because I love PadSplit. I think they're a great option for like a marketing, for co-living. But here's the thing. I hear a lot of people are like, oh, man, I have these problems. I have evictions. I'm like, yeah, you guys aren't doing the extra step that Pascal just mentioned in the vetting. Ask them a couple questions. It's not just like, oh, man, this person's willing to pay me, $200 a week to rent this spot. Can you set up minimums on PadSplit?
When you say minimum, you mean like minimum stay?
Length? Yeah.
Yeah, no. That's why I do my interview process. I think I have a whole process. Every single thing is scripted, and there's a process. Like I'm really trying to understand if is it a good fit?
And that's a huge thing I think people need to realize. It's not just, are they going to pay us money? Is it a good fit for the house? Because if you have a bad apple in the house, that will slowly spread. So you want to make sure they're a good fit for the house too. And also you're trying to make them happy. Like it's really, I always tell people, we're in the hospitality business. This is something a lot of people don't realize in real estate, which kind of pisses me off. Like you got to care about these people. You actually got to figure out how do you make them succeed in life. For me, it's way deeper, obviously, than just a place to live. Like, I want them to meet friends. I want them to have a little sense of community. Like, it's way deeper. And I think people will just see numbers. I'm like, guys, stop thinking about numbers. Think about hospitality. Think about serving and bringing value to these people.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's orienting around, what is the one metric that matters most? And that, I keep circling back because it's tenant tenure. We ask, okay, with every single thing that we do, our question, today in one of our meetings, we were talking about right now we have a cleaning closet in every house where we supply a vacuum, broom, mop, Fabuloso, Windex, some microfiber cloths, so that the house manager has cleaning supplies that they can access to clean common areas and whatnot. And we were talking about, do we allow or make it so that everyone else has access to the supplies? And so we are like, all right, what lens can we look this through? And the lens is, will sharing cleaning supplies increase tenant tenure? And let's run an experiment doing that. So I think it's very helpful to have that frame. And the other thing and I've heard this a lot recently, and I think it's figuring out, I think when you're new in business, you don't have the discipline yet, and you also haven't had enough success where you feel comfortable turning people away, right? When you get leads in the door, all you want to do is fill your home, and you don't really care who's in it, and like that's really, the the customer selection is the most important part, right? It's like if you were to run a fitness program and you focus on helping, women lose weight, but you have like this big guy that wants to like gain a ton of muscle. Like if he joins your program, he's going to be a terrible customer, right? Like none of your stuff's going to work for him, and he's going to be unhappy, and he paid you and you're going to be unhappy because, it's like, but if you find the right person who matches the product that you're selling for, then it's so much easier.
So true. I think it's also a way to let people know. I'll give you a quick story. So I had someone come in, and I usually don't do tours, but I was like, you know what? We'll just do a quick tour. Have someone kind of just introduce some people to him. And he came in with a little bit of attitude. He's like, 6 people live here? I'm like, yeah, we told you that before you even came in the house. Like, don't waste our time. And then I'm like, I told him, like, hey man, I'm actually trying, like, I don't want to be an asshole, but I'm trying to actually discourage you from living here because you've shown a lot of red flags with 6 people. We already told you that. And then you brought it up again. You talked about cleanliness, but you saw how spotless our house is. He hit me back the next day. He's like, bro, I am so sorry. I looked at 2 properties. This is by far the best thing in the world. I'll stay longer, whatever you need. I'll pay more. I'm like, okay, we don't need to do all that. But like, it's also let them know, like, hey, this could not be a good fit for you. I'm actually trying to turn you away because I want to make sure that you're going to be happy and also the house is going to be happy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's huge. I couldn't agree more.
Dude, we got to do like another podcast, bro, because I could go a whole nother hour with you on this.
Dude, yeah. Yeah, I love digging into this stuff. I mean, I think, it's just whenever you do something for a long time, you've just had enough time to iterate and like really understand how it works. And that would also be kind of my thought process here, for anyone that's thinking about going down this path. This isn't something where it's like, you're not successful in life in anything that you do for less than 5 years. Like every successful person that you know of is like famous and successful because they've been doing whatever it is they're doing for a really long time. So if this is an asset class that you want to get into and you're ready to explore, like, and you want to do it for a long time, awesome. I think that's the right way to focus on it. But if it's a short term, like a money grab, or you just pay with making all the mistakes, and you don't get any of the benefits of making those mistakes if you're not doing it for a long time.
So true. And you just touched on something that we can do another podcast about, but it's mentors or mistakes. And for both of us, you joining GoBundance, you having mentors early on. For me, that's what changed my life as well. It's like having those mentors, having those people that have already done something and learning from them instead of making all our own mistakes.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to make mistakes regardless, but like you're trying to limit the amount of mistakes that you make. And mentors are the exact way to do that.
100%. As we wrap up, I see growyourcashflow.io. Break that down. What is that?
Yeah. So growyourcashflow.io is just our main landing page where if you're interested in learning more about how to invest passively instead of actively, because you want to focus on your one thing, or diversify your portfolio, or reduce your volatility from the stock market. I'm teaching people what I wish I knew when I first started, and helping make that process a lot more transparent.
Dude, I love that. I'm excited to keep connecting with you, man. So before you say how people find you besides that website, I want to let you know that Growth House, we're very much a go-giving community. So we want to provide value to you since you hopped on here. So how can someone, when they reach out, whether it's Instagram, whatever, provide some value to Pascal?
Yeah, I think I think the small, easiest one is just engage on my posts. Let me know. Let me know you're reading. Give me feedback, like, oh, I thought this was great, or oh, I wish you would cover X, Y, and Z. I'm constantly looking for ideas, and I'm constantly looking for improvement. I think that's it. I think engaging with me, and if you have suggestions for me, like, I'm all ears.
I think this is so underestimated. I got to make this quick tangent. I would not be friends with Diego. I would not be friends with Brian Lubin if I wasn't also, before I even met them, engaging on their stuff. I was sharing their podcasts. I was liking their photos. I was commenting. Like, guys, if you want to connect with someone, show love before you even meet them.
That
So
is the way
that's
to
a
do it.
huge thing to do. Like, people underestimate that. What does that take? 10 seconds, if that? Send them a
Yeah.
DM and say, bro, this part where you said this on the Growth House podcast, fire. Even if you
That's
don't
how
have
we
ask.
connected. That's how you did the same
Probably.
stuff to me. Yeah.
Probably. So true, man.
Yeah.
Pascal, how do people find you? What's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah. So my primary platform is LinkedIn, but you can find me on all the social channels. But look for, I would say, go to the growyourcashflow.io website, and you'll find all my social links from there.
Awesome. I'll put them all in the description. Our motto is you become who you surround yourself with. I am honored to surround myself with you today, bro. And I'm excited to keep connected.
Likewise. Thanks for having me on the show, Jesse.